It was a dry Monday morning in the high desert of northern Arizona, April 14th, 2025. The kind of spring day that starts with a bite in the air but heats up fast under the sun. In the small town of Seligman, nestled along the old Route 66, families were waking slowly, windows cracked open to catch the breeze that carried distant trains and the occasional howl of coyotes. In a modest, white-trimmed trailer just east of town, the Allen family was going about their usual routine. Nora Allen was folding laundry near the sink. Her husband, Tyler, had left early for work on a highway maintenance crew. Their 3 children were inside. The youngest, Bowden, a shy but curious 2-year-old with a mop of sandy hair and a love for animals, was watching a cartoon on the small screen propped up in the living room. It only took a few minutes. A phone call, a distracted sibling, a screen door that didn't latch. By the time Nora realized Bowden wasn't inside, the shadows had shifted across the porch. She checked the backyard first, calling his name, her voice already tight. Then the side of the trailer, the gravel road. Her panic escalated from 0 to wildfire in seconds. "Bowden!" she shouted, running past the mailbox. Nothing. It wasn't like him to wander far, but here, surrounded by miles of open desert, far could mean danger. Cactus fields, loose soil, steep ravines, and animals, mountain lions, javelinas, coyotes. By noon, she had called 911. Within the hour, deputies from the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office were on scene. They didn't waste time. A child that young, alone in desert terrain, was a race against the clock. Temperatures were climbing toward 87 degrees Fahrenheit. The air was bone dry, the kind that dehydrates faster than you can feel. They brought drones, heat-sensing devices. A DPS helicopter swept across the mesa to the south. Local volunteers joined in. Farmers, ranchers, even passing tourists. But by sunset, Bowden was still gone. The area was deceptively vast. Scrub brush and mesquite formed mazes. Rattlesnakes stirred under rocks. The roads turned to dust and then to nothing. And Bowden, barefoot now, likely scared and disoriented, was somewhere in it. A ranger named Ethan Pierce, with 2 decades of search and rescue experience, stood on a ridge and shook his head. "If he's out there overnight," he said quietly to a deputy, "he'll need a miracle." That night, the search continued, on foot, by air, and by flashlight. But the desert kept its silence, and somewhere in the dark, something else was moving. By 9 p.m., the temperature in the Seligman Desert had dropped more than 30 degrees. The heat of the day retreated quickly in the high-elevation air, and the land turned cold, hard, and silent. Volunteers moved in slow lines, with flashlights and thermal scopes. The Allen family's front porch, once just a quiet place to drink coffee and watch passing trucks, had become a command center. Extension cords snaked through the yard. A folding table was covered in walkie-talkies, water bottles, and printed aerial maps, marked with red tape and hand-drawn circles. Nora sat wrapped in her husband's old flannel, her hands shaking around a mug of untouched coffee. Her sister, Kelly, sat next to her, rubbing her back gently, murmuring that he would be found, that kids are resilient, that dogs sometimes find their way home. But Odin hadn't taken the dog, and he wasn't even wearing socks. 2 years old, one of the searchers whispered to another, barefoot in the desert. That's not good. Nearby, Ranger Ethan Pierce gave orders in a low, firm tone. He'd helped locate hikers, campers, and even a lost dementia patient once. But children were different. They moved without patterns. They didn't yell for help. They hid. And when they got scared, they stopped moving, which was the worst thing they could do out here. Meanwhile, several miles away, Under a sky so clear it looked painted, a small figure sat between two low shrubs, knees drawn to his chest, head resting on one arm. Bowden. He hadn't meant to go far. At first, he thought he was just following a jackrabbit. Then the rabbit disappeared, and he found himself in a place with no familiar shapes. No house, no swing, no voices. He had cried, once, but the wind stole his sound. So he walked, and walked. By the time the sun fell, Bowden had made it more than 2 miles from home, through a dry wash and onto an open plain. The ground scratched his legs, stones stuck in his shoes, but something kept him going, a presence just behind him. At first, he thought it was another animal. It moved quietly, almost like the rabbit, but heavier. Its paws left prints like his dog's, but wider. It didn't bark, it didn't growl, just watched. And when he tripped over a root and cried again, it came closer. A shape in the dark, a coyote. Most children would have screamed, most would have tried to run, but Bowden had grown up seeing coyotes from the porch. His dad had even told him they were like desert dogs, not mean, just wild. So he didn't scream. He whispered, "Hi." The coyote did not answer, but it didn't leave either. Instead, it laid down a few feet away, head on its paws, eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. And together, in the breathless silence of the desert, they waited. Back at the edge of the Allen property, a deputy named Melissa Greer held up a report from the canine unit. "We found small tracks," she said, "but they stopped near the wash. It's like he vanished." Ranger Pierce looked at the map. "That's coyote territory." She hesitated. "You think he was taken?" He shook his head. "No, if he was, we'd have found signs. Drag marks, blood. No, I think something's out there, and I'm praying it's watching over him." They paused, listening. Far in the distance, a single howl broke the stillness. Not one of terror, but of announcement. Something had seen the boy. At 6:04 a.m., the sun broke over the Black Mountains, casting long shadows across the brush and the rock-strewn washes east of Seligman. The temperature climbed fast, from a cold 45 degrees Fahrenheit to over 70 degrees Fahrenheit within the hour. The land, which had seemed lifeless and empty by night, now shimmered with movement. Birds stirred, lizards scurried, and the scent of creosote filled the warming air. For the search teams, it was hour 18. Most hadn't slept. They rotated shifts in silence, eyes bloodshot from dust and scanning. A missing child in open terrain was a mathematical race. Exposure time versus stamina versus terrain hazards. And on day 2, statistics weren't on the boy's side. Ranger Ethan Pierce stood over a series of small indentations in the dirt. They were almost invisible in the early light. He crouched, took out his phone, and snapped a picture. A child's footprint. To the side of it, overlapping, paw prints. 4 toes, deep-set pads, wild canine. He radioed base. "I've got something. Half a mile east of last grid marker Charlie 6. Sheriff's Deputy Melissa Greer arrived 10 minutes later with a bloodhound on a long leash. The dog barked once, circled, and then pulled in a straight line toward the hills. The team followed on foot, careful not to disturb the trail. "This doesn't make sense," Greer said under her breath. "If he'd stayed here last night, we would have seen something. Debris, scratches. He's still moving." Geerse nodded. "Or being guided." She looked up sharply. "By what? A ghost?" He didn't answer. Back in town, Nora Allen was sitting in a folding chair beside a FEMA water station, holding Bowden's favorite stuffed bear, a chewed-up raccoon named Roy. She hadn't spoken in hours. Her husband Tyler was pacing nearby, alternating between furious calls to Search Command and long, broken silences. Neither had slept. The sheriff had quietly arranged for medics to stay nearby in case one of them collapsed from exhaustion. Reporters had begun to show up. By mid-morning, Bowden's face was on every TV station in Arizona. A chubby-cheeked toddler with sea-glass eyes and a crooked smile. The story gripped the state. Lost toddler vanishes in desert near Seligman. Search enters second day. Back in the hills, Bowden was awake. He had slept in the shadow of a large mesquite, curled beside a warm shape. The coyote, larger than he remembered, had not left. It sat watchful as the boy blinked at the rising sun and rubbed dust from his face. He whimpered once, thirsty, then staggered to his feet. The coyote walked a few feet ahead and paused. When Bowden followed, it moved again. That second day was the longest yet. Bowden, legs scraped and feet swollen, trudged over rocks and through thorny brush. The coyote stayed ahead, guiding him gently, not threatening, just present. They passed a dry stream bed, a rusted fence post, the remains of an old cattle gate. Civilization, almost, but no people. By noon, Bowden had walked nearly 7 miles since he vanished. He fell once, then again, sat for a while, eyes dry and vacant. The coyote circled him, gently nudging his shoulder with a cool nose. Then it waited. He stood, and they moved again. Late that afternoon, Ranger Pierce got another call. A rancher named Scotty Dunton had reported something odd on his property. "I got dogs," he said on the radio, "but this ain't one of mine. Big coyote-looking mutt came around the barn this morning. I ignored it, until I saw the kid behind it." Pierce dropped his radio. "Say that again." "The boy," Dunton repeated. "Little guy, dirty as hell, following the thing like it was his pet." Pierce jumped into the truck. "Don't let them leave. I'm on my way." And for the first time in 2 days, the search had a real direction. Scotty Dunton had worked that stretch of land his entire life. His ranch, about 12 miles east of Seligman, sat near the edge of the Aubrey Cliffs, a rugged, windy place full of dry grass, rusted wire fences, and an old barn that hadn't been painted since the 1980s. He wasn't the kind of man who panicked easily, but that morning, something felt off. He'd been feeding cattle just after sunrise when Buford, his Anatolian Pyrenees, started pacing near the fence line, ears low, tail straight, head tilted toward the east. Scotty saw it. At first, just a shape on the horizon, low to the ground, pale brown, moving slow and steady across the open dirt, like a stray, but not quite a dog, leaner, wild. And behind it, stumbling but upright, was a child. His first thought was that it couldn't be real. His second, that it was the child. "Jesus Christ," he muttered, and ran. He didn't bring a weapon, didn't even put on boots, just sprinted across the pasture, heart in his throat. As he got closer, the coyote, or whatever it was, paused, turned its head slightly, and trotted to the side. It didn't flee, it didn't snarl, it simply vanished into the brush, leaving the boy standing alone. The child was sunburned, covered in dust and tiny cuts. His lips were cracked. His small pajama pants were torn at the knees. He looked up at Scotty with unfocused eyes. "You Bowden?" Scotty asked gently, crouching down. The boy nodded once, then whispered, "He helped me." "Who helped you?" "The dog, not mine. He showed me where to go." Scotty blinked, stunned, then scooped him up in both arms and turned back toward the house. He radioed the sheriff's office immediately. "I've got him," he said. "The boy, he's alive." A pause, static. Then, "Repeat, you've located Bowden Allen?" "Affirmative. He's on my ranch, and I think y'all owe that coyote a steak dinner." An ambulance arrived within 15 minutes. The medics were prepared for the worst, snakebite. Dehydration, shock. But aside from sun exposure, sore feet, and minor abrasions, Bowden was intact and alert. Nora and Tyler arrived by helicopter less than an hour later. The reunion was chaotic and silent all at once. A scream, a sob, the sound of bodies colliding into a desperate embrace. Bowden didn't say much. He just clung to his mother, small fingers curled into the back of her shirt like they were afraid to let go. Later, inside the mobile field unit, Sheriff Rivas asked Scotty to walk through what happened. Scotty did his best. "I'm telling you," he said, still shaking his head. "That thing led him here. I ain't seen anything like it." "What was it exactly?" Rivas asked. "A dog? No collar, no tags, bigger than a coyote, but lean. Yellow eyes. Didn't bark, didn't growl, just stayed with him, like it knew what it was doing." Pierce stood nearby, listening. "Coyotes don't do that," he said quietly. "No," Scotty agreed. "They don't." That evening, news spread across the country. Lost toddler found alive after 4 days in Arizona desert. Photos of Bowden being carried out of the field by paramedics lit up every major network. CNN, NBC, Fox. But one picture, taken by a local volunteer, stood out. It showed Bowden walking slowly, barefoot and filthy, just a few feet behind a long-limbed animal in the dust, glancing back as if checking the boy was still there. The photo went viral. People called it the Desert Guardian. Some swore it was a stray dog. Others were convinced it was a spirit. Biologists called it behaviorally impossible. But none of them were there. Only Bowden knew. Bowden spent 2 nights in the pediatric unit of Flagstaff Medical Center. Nurses brought him popsicles and warm socks. His mother never left his side. Doctors examined him carefully, checking for signs of exposure, infection, or hidden trauma. What they found was surprising. Physically, he was intact. Mild dehydration, superficial cuts, no signs of snakebite, no broken bones. For a 2-year-old who had survived 4 days in a desert known for scorpions, heat stroke, and predators, it bordered on miraculous. Emotionally, though, there were traces. He was quiet, unusually still. He flinched at sudden movement, stared at blank walls, as if remembering something invisible. When asked what he saw, he didn't answer. But when one nurse gently asked, "Were you scared out there?" Bowden whispered, "No, I wasn't alone." The Allen family never found a rational explanation. Search and rescue teams combed the area for weeks, trying to locate the animal that had been spotted alongside him. They found prints, tracks matching a coyote or possibly a mixed-breed stray, but no physical animal. Ranchers in the region confirmed occasional sightings of lone desert dogs, but none acted like this one. No one had ever seen an animal stay with a child that long. Not in this terrain. Not without food or water or benefit. Bowden, when asked again a week later, said the same thing. He didn't talk. He just walked ahead. And every time I sat down, he waited. 3 months later, a small ceremony was held at the Yavapai County Sheriff's Substation. Searchers, deputies, local firefighters, and ranchers were recognized for their role in saving Bowden. His mother gave a brief speech, halting, tearful, and placed a hand on the folded map they had used to search for him. "I want to thank the officers, the ranchers, the volunteers, and I want to thank whoever sent that animal to my son." There was silence, then applause. No one called it foolish. No one called it luck, because every person in that room had seen the terrain, had walked it, had felt how fast it could swallow someone whole. And somehow, a child had walked out of it, following a creature not one of them could explain. That fall, A local artist painted a mural on the side of a gas station in downtown Seligman. It showed a child's hand reaching forward in a vast ochre desert, and just ahead, not quite touching, the lean figure of a wild coyote glancing back over its shoulder. At the bottom, someone had painted 5 words. He waited. He never left. Epilogue. Today, Bowden is back home. He laughs again. He plays with his siblings. And sometimes, just before sunset, he stands on the porch and stares out toward the far hills. And if you ask him what he sees, he'll smile and say quietly, "I think he's still out there, just making sure I'm okay." And maybe he is, because sometimes in this wide and harsh world, something wild chooses not to harm, but to guard. And that's a story worth remembering. If this story moved you, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. We share real-life stories of resilience, kindness, and the mysteries that still exist in our world. Your support helps us bring these voices to light.